Good morning and welcome to Wake Up America. It's Memorial Day here in America, Monday, May 31st. I'm Joe Pinion, filling in for Rob Finley, who will be back with you tomorrow.
And I'm Rachel Roller. Joe, it's nice to have you.
Always good to be here with the good people of America and you, of course.
Appreciate it. Even at this early hour.
You know?
I know it's a little bit of a stretch. Well, we appreciate it. And we will be honoring those that have served our country throughout our show this morning. Here's also some of the other stories that we are following. President Biden will be laying the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier later this morning at Arlington National Cemetery. Newsmax is going to bring you that coverage live later this morning. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris under fire for a senseless tweet about this important holiday, what she said and what she didn't say that has people so upset. And God bless the USA. The man behind that incredible song, Lee Greenwood, will tell us what inspired him, what he's up to. Plus, he's going to give Wake Up America an exclusive rendition of that classic song coming up.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rachel. We'll see you soon. All right, let's bring in our powerhouse panel with policy analyst and Project 21 member Donna Jackson, political analyst Mark Halperin, and former Florida State House candidate and Marine Corps veteran Matt Tito. I want to start this day in our country of truly great importance with this utterly senseless tweet put out by Vice President Kamala Harris. Here it is. She says, "Enjoy the long weekend," with a picture of herself. No mention of Memorial Day or a veteran. Yourself, Matt, do you feel disrespected? Look, it seemed like a cavalier tweet, but at the same time, it almost feels as if they've already acknowledged the fact that they clearly missed the point of the day.
Yeah, you know who's not enjoying the long weekend? The 6,000 men and women who lost their lives during the Iraq and Afghanistan war. The Gold Star families that don't have their family member there with them today during Memorial Day. The friends and family of people who lost somebody overseas. It was a totally insensitive tweet. Kamala Harris clearly does not care about the military. She does not care about the great men and women who've made the ultimate sacrifice in order to have the freedoms that we have in this country. And then she later on came out with a tweet to basically backtrack everything that she said when she got a lot of criticism about it. But she's basically playing to her base, which believes Memorial Day is just about the celebration of imperialism. And the woke left, how long is that going to be until they try and cancel Memorial Day? This is Kamala Harris, this is Joe Biden, and this is what they believe in. They don't care about the military. It was a completely insensitive tweet and absolutely disgusting.
Mark, I'll come to you because, talking about the politics of this, the optics clearly are terrible here. You talk about the fact that nearly 500,000 Americans laid down their lives in World War II to turn back the Nazis, to say that evil shall not grow on our watch. Talk to us a little bit, number one, about the politics of it, but then also, two, when we actually drill down to the human component of this, those individuals who recognize that freedom is not free and that many people have raised their hand to make sure that we can live as free people here in America.
Good morning, Joe. It's not just today, but every day where we should honor not just those who have fallen to allow us to live in liberty, but their families. And so this is obviously a special day, but it's something that should be part of the American mindset every day because of how important those folks have been to America, to creating the country that we have. Look, this is part incompetence and also partly mindset. And I think the corrective tweet doesn't erase the initial one. Of social media posting that is something that really just a basic competence. And remember, this is someone who is a heartbeat away from the presidency, an old heart that beats away from the presidency. And so as she has assumed office, she has gotten to a series of experiences to try to get ready to be commander in chief. This is not a great step in that process.
Now, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley responded to the vice president with her own concise three-word tweet saying, "unprofessional and unfit." Donna, I'll come to you. Those three words describe everything, don't they?
Absolutely. And you have to remember that Kamala Harris started off her vice presidency in that same way when she didn't return the salute when she was entering the airplane. She has to show the base that she disrespects America and that she hates America. And this is just another one of those stunts. She cares more about tearing down the country from within than the enemies that we face outside of this country. And she has no intention of ever changing that. She's always going to disrespect the country, and she hates it. And I don't understand why she's even in the office if she hates it so much.
All right. Now, Harris did try to do some damage control. You have the sending out the other tweet saying, throughout our history, our servicemen and women have risked everything to defend our freedoms and our country. As we prepare to honor them on Memorial Day, we remember their service and their sacrifice. You know, Matt, back to you. Again, seems to, number one, acknowledge the fact that the first tweet was reckless. To me, is this clearly too little, too late from somebody who is part of a new grassroots movement to effectively say that at the heart of everything that this nation is an evil nation, and that really, in many ways, permeates everything that they've done to this date?
Yeah, absolutely. It's too little, too late. That should have been the lead tweet. That should have been the only tweet that she sent out. I mean, she's got plenty of smart people around her probably controlling her Twitter. How in the world that original tweet goes out is beyond me, unless it was sent out by design, which is exactly what it was, because nothing these people do is without calculation, political calculation, and knowing exactly what the outcome and the perception is going to be. They know exactly what they're doing. And you see it now infecting the military. You see it now infecting the wokeism is coming into the military with critical race theory and extremism training and all these different things. And the military used to be the one organization, the one part of this country that was unaffected by politics. It was supposed to be nonpartisan. And now you see them infiltrating the military, and it's all by design. They hate the military. They want to change it. They don't like it. The woke left thinks that we're an imperialistic country. They want to get rid of Memorial Day. They don't like it. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are leading the way on this effort.
Right. Now, overnight,
Matt, I can tell you.
Switching gears to politics here, we've got the Democrats in the Texas House of Representatives. They staged a walkout to delay the passage of a voting bill. Prior to the vote, Representative Hakeem Jeffries had this to say about the voting bill. Take a listen.
Well, the Texas law is shameful, and Republicans clearly in Texas and throughout the country want to make it harder to vote and easier to steal an election. That's the only way that I can interpret the voter suppression epidemic that we see working its way from one state, Georgia, to Arizona, to Texas, and all across the country.
Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott releasing this statement saying, quote, it's deeply disappointing and concerning for Texans that neither will reach my desk, ensuring the integrity of our elections and reforming a broken bail system remain emergencies in Texas. Mark, I'll come to you. You know, how do we put this, perhaps maybe in light of the Memorial Day mishaps at the White House, but also this constant drumbeat that any and everything Republicans do to place safeguards on our election, to make sure that the founding principles of this nation remain intact, is somehow rooted in some type of antebellum disdain for growth and equality in this nation?
Well, just quickly, Matt, I can assure you the vice president's office does not know exactly what it's doing. They have a lot of incompetence over there. And so I think that's probably more the explanation of that tweet. On the Texas law, this is deja vu all over again. Just like with Georgia, this law is not perfect. This law's intentions are not perfect, but the characterizations of it and not putting it into the context of some other blue states and the laws that they have, it's just once again, the politics of the left is going after something that isn't there. The law should be debated. We should look at the provisions. The governor will do that. But this is being painted in a way by the Democrats that just doesn't match up with the reality of what's in the law.
Now, Donna, I'll come to you because in many ways, for better and for worse, Democrats said that all of these changes to the normal course of doing business in our elections was due to COVID. I don't know if they've realized this, but we have millions upon millions of Americans who have been vaccinated. The CDC has lifted the mask guidelines more or less across this great nation. How do you actually think that this type of rhetoric is going to impact the upcoming midterm, where Democrats seem to think that they want to try to make sure that these COVID provisions become permanent ones?
I think this is all smokescreen. Listen, you know, the fact that they're saying that these laws are suppressing votes, the reality is that for a long time, this country, a lot of the elections in minority communities were stolen by fraudulent votes. That's a fact. We've done our organization actually did a synopsis and analysis of that, and they found that the reason why they don't want that provision in there is because they won't be able to water down our vote and steal the elections. All of these integrity laws that you have that are being put forth are things that every business in America uses in their own business and hiring practices. So the fact that they're saying that this is voter suppression, it's ridiculous. It's not about voter suppression. It's about how can we ensure that our candidate wins by stealing the elections in minority communities that they know that no one will come and double check because of the threat of being called a racist. And you know what? People are going to have some thick skin and allow themselves to be called that, because integrity matters. And it doesn't matter if someone calls you a name or not. Right is right. I can't go and get a job without an ID card. I can't go on an airplane without an ID card. I can't open a bank account without an ID card. I can't travel or book a hotel room without an ID card. So we don't have job suppression because people require ID card. We don't have cell phone suppression because we don't have an ID card. But somehow, if you require an ID card to vote, you're suppressing a right of an individual. Why aren't we mad about that? American Express doesn't give out an ID card to a credit card to Black people. It takes a village to get an ID card for American Express. But then he wants to be the one that comes out and talks about how he doesn't like this law. Well, start with your own companies.
Right. Well, I'll say here, it's interesting to see who is allowed to say elections are being stolen and who isn't, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to our panel. We'll see you at the top of the hour. Rachel, back to you.
David Rubin, welcome back to Wake Up America, sir.
Thank you, Rachel. Good to be with you again.
It's good to see you. Let's start with the ceasefire there. We know that the Egyptian and Israeli foreign ministers did meet over the weekend discussing a permanent solution. What can we expect?
Well, there is a ceasefire. We're kicking the can down the road for another few years. Hamas, with the help of Iran, is already refueling, restocking, and Israel is going to try and stop that to the best of our ability. But that's where it stands at this point.
Okay, and David, as far as support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, it appears to be fading. It seems the only thing all the opponents have in common, though, is that they want him out. What do you think will happen as far as this coalition forming?
Yes, this is indeed an anti-Netanyahu coalition in formation. And so once this coalition is formed, then it's going to have no reason to exist anymore, because its whole purpose has been to get rid of Netanyahu as prime minister and to get rid of his government. The problem is that what they're talking about is having a prime minister, Naftali Bennett, who is of the right, and they want to form a coalition of mostly of the left. So the coalition will be a majority of the left with a right-wing prime minister. It makes absolutely no sense and has no chance of accomplishing anything. So it's just ridiculous. And actually, a lot of Israelis of the more conservative bent are quite enraged about it, because Naftali Bennett got elected to the Knesset with votes mostly of people on the right, and now he is forming a coalition with people on the left in order to get the prime minister's seat. Quite unethical and quite outrageous, frankly.
And let me ask you, David, if the Liberal Party in Israel can put together this coalition government, how do you think that's going to affect Israel's relationship with Palestinians? Do you think it'll get better or worse?
Oh, the relationship with the Arabs of the land of Israel, who call themselves Palestinians, it's going to get worse no matter what. It doesn't matter whether the prime minister or the government is from the right or the left or the center. The The Arabs of the land of Israel have been given promises by this two-state solution that Joe Biden keeps pushing, and that Obama pushed before him, that Trump kind of pushed to the side. Their hopes keep getting raised up every time, and because the hopes get raised up, so they riot and they launch rocket attacks, and this is all with the encouragement of the President of the United States, those 4,000 rockets that landed on Israel and the rioting of Arabs in Israel's cities.
I was going to ask you lastly about the reaction in the United States, David. This, of course, we're seeing a lot of people responding. Just this past weekend, over 1,000 people marched in Washington, D.C., though, for what they call the National March for Palestine, hoping to end U.S. aid to Israel. Real quickly, why would you say it is that U.S. aid for Israel is so important?
Well, first of all, it's mostly Muslims, Muslims who hate Israel and hate America who are demonstrating. So I should point that out and make that very clear. Standing with Israel goes all the way back to the founding fathers. It's a bond of values. It's a bond that goes back to the roots in the Hebrew Bible that all of the founders of the United States knew about. And hopefully America will once again find that bond with Israel, which was so strong during the Trump administration.
All right, David Rubin, all the time we have for this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, as always.
Thank you.
All right, we still have much more coming up next. Is the pizza world going digital? A growing number of restaurant owners are deciding.
The moment that we celebrated is the toughest day of the year. We're honored, but it's a tough day. It brings back everything. And so I can't thank you enough for your continued service to the country.
Good morning and welcome to Wake Up America. It's Memorial Day here across the land, Monday, May 31st. I'm Joe Pinion, filling in for Rob Finley, who'll be back with you all tomorrow.
But it's nice to have you in the meantime, Joe. I'm Rachel Roller. We're going to be honoring those that served our country throughout the show this morning. We're also following a bunch of stories, so let's take a look at those right now. President Biden will be laying the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier later this morning at Arlington National Cemetery. Newsmax will bring you live coverage of that. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris under fire for a senseless tweet about this important holiday, what she said and what she didn't say. And God bless the USA. The man behind that incredible song, Lee Greenwood, will tell us what inspired him, what he's up to. Plus, he's going to give us an exclusive rendition of the classic song coming up. Joe?
All right. Thanks, Rachel. We'll talk to you in a little bit. Let's bring back our powerhouse panel with policy analyst and Project 21 member Donna Jackson, political analyst Mark Halperin, and former Florida State House candidate and Marine Corps veteran Matt Tito. Good morning to all of you. Now, CNN Jake Tapper had his own advice for his colleague Chris Cuomo after advising his brother, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, on harassment allegations. Take a listen.
I cannot imagine a world in which anybody in journalism thinks that was appropriate. So, I mean, I agree with that. And he said Chris, in his apology that he delivered on air, said that he put us in a bad spot. And I would also agree with that. And then just as a last point, I would say that I work very hard to be fair and to be ethical and to not cross lines. And I certainly understand the love that Chris has for his brother, and I have a brother, and I get it.
Now, Mark, I want to start with you first. I think, look, most people can sympathize with kind of in unprecedented territory to have someone of such stature in the journalistic world, at the same time having a person of such high profile in the political world. I think most people empathize with having to choose family over profession, but I think the real issue here is the hypocrisy and the lack of disclosure that seems to be par for the course when it comes to these types of things on the left.
I heard someone the other day refer to those two guys as two colleagues who deserve each other.
Oh, goodness. Matt, obviously, I'll come to you here because you talk about a conflict of interest. Look, again, you have somebody struggling under siege from the grandparents that were killed because of a census policy to the countless sexual harassment or sexual impropriety cases against the governor, alleged. What do you think would have been the proper course of action here?
I think Jake Tapper talking about being fair and ethical is pretty rich. That's interesting. But this is the first time that you've seen, CNN anchors kind of pitted against each other and breaking ranks. So I just wonder if Jake Tapper is gunning for Chris Cuomo's 9 o'clock p.m. time slot, maybe trying to push him out. But listen, I mean, what the governor of New York did was absolutely disgusting. He covered it up. He knows exactly what he did. And, his brother was giving him advice on the side, which is totally inappropriate. Jake Tapper was actually right about that. It'll be interesting to see what CNN does about it. I guess we'll find out soon. But, Jake Tapper breaking ranks, going after Chris Cuomo, you just wonder if he wants that 9 p.m. time slot.
Now, Don, I'll come to you because, on some basic error, when I switch gears a little bit, you have Benjamin Netanyahu run, longest serving prime minister, appears like it may be coming to an end. Days after a small right-wing party announced they're working towards a coalition. Here's his former mayor of Israel, Shiloh, David Rubin, moments ago, speaking about the situation.
The coalition will be a majority of the left with a right-wing prime minister. It makes absolutely no sense and has no chance of accomplishing anything.
So it appears that we have perhaps come to the end of an era for Benjamin Netanyahu. Don, I'll start with you quickly. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that some of this wouldn't, it's worth looking at that some of this wouldn't be happening if it was the Trump administration. I think that, this administration is encouraging bad behavior with Iran and Pakistan. And so a lot of this is coming from that perspective. The U.S. is very supportive of Iran and Pakistan's bad behavior. And the Obama administration wanted the prime minister out. And I think that this is just in line with the Biden administration and helping to encourage that. I think he's doing a great job. Americans and evangelicals have always been a strong supporter of Israel. And Mark, I hope we continue that.
Absolutely. Mark, I'll come to you because if he is ousted, where do you see the relations between the United States and Israel headed? It looks like to the extent that they do have a coalition government in Israel, it will be gridlocked. And meanwhile, the interest of America in the Middle East and perhaps the interest of peace in the region seems to be in jeopardy, specifically because we have an administration that does not seem to recognize that Iran has no good intentions as it relates to the United States or Israel, and that we have Hamas effectively on the verge of becoming the equivalent of Hezbollah, individuals who can both be terrorists by day and also be masquerading as legislators with briefcases.
Well, look, it's a region of uncertainties. I think there's two main uncertainties right now. First of all, look at Prime Minister Netanyahu's Twitter feed, and you'll see, not surprisingly, he's not giving up. He's been able to pull rabbits out of hats before. Let's see if he can do it again here, but he's pretty aggressive right now in trying to undermine a possible new coalition. The other uncertainty is what a Biden administration's relationship with a new Israeli government would be like. We know Bibi Netanyahu and Joe Biden are never going to be best friends. What would Joe Biden's relationship be like with a new coalition government? We just don't know.
Now, back here at home down in Florida, we had 2 people who were killed, another 20 that were injured after a shooting at a nightclub in Miami, a city, a country that's seen a severe rise in gun violence. Here's the police chief's reaction to that tragedy.
My worry, and I think the worry of my colleagues across the country, is that as we continue to talk about defunding the police instead of making the police better and investing on good policing, and then on the right, we're talking about more guns for everybody. It's going to be a long summer.
Now, Matt, it seems to many that the conditions for what that chief is talking about, the perfect storm of doom, police stations being defunded, recruitment for new officers going down, you have retirements for existing police officers going up, and caught in the middle is the fact that while there seems to be an assault on our Second Amendment rights, there's little conversation happening about what he's focused on, which are illegal guns in the hands of individuals who have no care or concern for the law, even if you pass new ones.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, defunding the police isn't the answer, because clearly when there's incidents like this and you call 911, you have an issue at your home, you want the cops to come. Here in St. Petersburg, actually, they started defunding the police, and we actually have social workers now responding to nonviolent 911 calls. But, anybody knows who's been a police officer that sometimes when you respond to a nonviolent call, it becomes violent very quickly. And so, that's certainly not the answer. Defunding the police clearly doesn't work. And the rhetoric from the Democrats about these Second Amendment limitations, taking away your gun rights, listen, at the end of the day, you're never going to take away the guns from the bad people. They're always going to have their weapons. And so, the Democrats' whole message in terms of limiting the law-abiding Second Amendment, people in this country is not the answer to it. So we need to get back to talking to each other on both sides. These incidents like this down in Miami need to stop. This is out of control. We don't seem to know too much about this incident yet. We do know they just put out a $125,000 reward for any information leading to the 3 suspects. But, they always talk about the AR-15. Apparently they used a rifle and also a handgun. So, are the Democrats going to come for our handguns now?
Well, I think, Mark, to that point quickly here, how do we get to the bottom of this? How do we, if it's possible, divorce the politics from the policies that need to be in place, and also making sure that we have a shared sense of humanity when we engage in these types of conversations?
I think by some measures, this is the most divisive issue in the country right now. You hear it all quarters that people will say they'd like a solution. They agree there's too much gun violence, but I think we're far away from a consensus about how to address it.
All right. Today, also want to thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you after the break. Here's Rachel with more of what to watch for here today on Newsmax. Rachel.
Thanks, Joe. Let's take a look. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will attend a wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery today. Also, President Biden is set to deliver the Memorial Day address at the 153rd National Memorial Day observance. And coming up right here on Wake Up America.
I think for many people, the response to this Chinese deception when it comes to the origins of COVID has been puzzling. We've got television stations running a constant death scroll across our dials, and yet when there's strong evidence that the World Health Organization knew that COVID was going from continent to continent, at the same time they said it couldn't go person to person, we somehow can't accept the fact that China was duplicitous in their dealings with the world and allowed this plague to be visited upon too many souls.
Well, it's late in coming. I mean, this is a line of inquiry that the media and others should have been investigating for over a year now, really. And the Biden administration seems to have gotten the joke, gotten the message, and they say they're going to look aggressively into this. The president's asked for 90 days. I bet that timetable gets moved up because there's an urgency to this now. It's a matter of public policy. It's a matter of international relations. And I think people say, well, won't get to the bottom of it. I think we might.
Now, Matt, I come to you because, at some point there has to be a level of accountability. The press were ready to string up President Trump by his thumbs by saying that somehow his response was inept, even though Joe Biden has yet to been able to point to anything he would have done differently were he the president at the time of that COVID virus hit. What should the level of accountability be when we know for a fact that China manipulated the PPE supply chain to ensure that they were prepared and the world was left bare? And that's not just a Republican talking point or my opinion. That is based on the report of DHS and also the independent opinion of economists of all walks of life.
Well, the congressman said that this is the greatest cover-up in human history. And I don't know, it's either between this or UFOs, so we'll let the people decide on that. But in 2017, it's very interesting. Dr. Fauci said, almost as if he was a prophet, that there would be an infectious disease outbreak during the President Trump's presidency. How did he know that? I think Dr. Fauci is the key to all this. I mean, he's the one who was releasing money to fund the Wuhan lab. He knows more than he's leading on, and he's been all over the place on this issue. He's been defending China since the beginning. And Donald Trump came out right away and said this all started in the lab in China in the Wuhan lab. And it either came out incidentally or came out on purpose. We still don't know the answer to that. So hopefully these investigations will be able to figure out exactly what happened. But the media and the Democrats got together and they basically took the opposite stance of whatever Donald Trump said. They wanted Donald Trump to be wrong, because if they can prove that he was wrong, they could beat him in the presidential race in 2020. And it played out exactly like they wanted it to. And now that they're going back and looking into it, I think it's good. Hopefully it's a real investigation. And hopefully we get to the bottom of this. But I think Dr. Fauci is the key to a lot of this.
Now, Donna, I'll come to you because perhaps the one question that people have not asked enough is what did Dr. Fauci know and when did he know it? Because it appears that he was instrumental, for better and for worse, in providing, in many ways, the seed funding for what potentially could be one of the worst biological disasters of a generation.
Well, first of all, I think that Donald Trump and Senator Cotton are owed an apology by all of the media, because they were branded as these Looney Tunes when they first came out and said we believe that that was where it started. So I think that we need to acknowledge first. And then the second thing is, Dr. Fauci turned out to be a perfect spokesperson for being able to hammer the president, then President Trump, in order to make sure that the American people were in such fear that they wanted to see change. And I think that's the big difference. I think that this was a lot of, I don't want to say it's planned, but I think it was strategically planned in the way that they used that scenario as a talking point to try to sell Biden as this somehow, great candidate, and he wasn't. So I think he knows a lot. He always knew a lot, and at any time during this pandemic, he could have came out with that information, but it was a strategic move so that they can take control and determine the outcome of the presidency. That it was just that.
Now, Mark, when I switch gears a little bit, obviously coming up on the anniversary of the Tulsa riots, there have been some reports that there are threats that could potentially end up having repeats in violence or upticks in violence to, in many ways, bring back that atmosphere of fear. How do we deal with this in this current political environment where it seems as if our apprehensions about the lesser angels that in many ways stains our yesterday compromise our ability to move forward and actually build the world that most people want to be a part of?
Well, I think the state and local authorities are pretty well aware of the risks here, and they're being, as I understand it, pretty aggressive. Look, this is a piece of American history that is now much better known than it was before, and I think that's great. It's something that should be studied, understood, and resolved to say we need to learn the lessons and apply them to where we are right now.
Right now, Mark, Matt, I'll come to you because at some point you have to start understanding that all of these threads are connected. We have, in many ways, people obsessed with the racist origins of this nation. Meanwhile, we seem to have people also concerned about setting the conditions for the isolation and vilification of such sets of people as it relates to our response to COVID. We've got a store in Nashville, a hat store, in deep water after selling not vaccinated Star of David badges, comparing